The champagne flute shattered against marble. Isolde didn't flinch. She'd been folding silk napkins in the dining hall when the sound cracked through 3 rooms, sharp as a gunshot. Her hands stilled over the cream-colored fabric, fingers remembering the angle of perfect creases even as her pulse forgot its rhythm. She knew that sound. Crystal meeting stone. Fury, meeting floor. The mansion had been empty for 47 minutes. She'd counted each one while wrestling the 12-foot spruce into its stand, while hanging garlands nobody would see, while preparing a feast for ghosts. The Vitelli family had scattered to their holiday estates: Milan, Monaco, the Swiss Alps. Even the guards had rotated out, leaving skeleton security on the grounds. Everyone gone except her. And him. Kazimir Volkov didn't celebrate Christmas, didn't celebrate anything as far as Isolde could tell. The Russian occupied the East Wing like a beautiful, dangerous shadow, conducting business through encrypted calls and meetings held in rooms she'd been told never to enter. She cleaned around his existence, an orbit that never touched, until tonight. She moved through the corridor, her footsteps soundless on Persian runners. The house sprawled around her in manufactured darkness. Timers had killed most lights an hour ago, leaving only the amber glow of sconces placed exactly 40 feet apart. Architectural lighting designed by someone who understood the aesthetics of menace. The east wing door stood open. Isolde stopped. That door was never open. She'd worked here for 8 months and had never seen past its threshold. Now warm light spilled across polished floors, and she could hear him breathing. Not labored, not calm. Something between. "Come here." His voice carried no anger. That's what frightened her. Casimir's rage was surgical, controlled. She'd heard him destroy men's lives over the phone with barely elevated volume. This emptiness in his tone suggested something worse than fury. Something broken. She appeared in the doorway and forgot to breathe. He stood beside his desk, one hand still extended from throwing the glass. The other gripped his phone like evidence. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar. Unprecedented. And his platinum hair, usually severe and perfect, fell across his forehead. Those eyes, gray as Moscow winter, fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin feel translucent. "Tell me what you see." He turned the phone toward her. A text message glowed on the screen, accompanied by a photo. Isolde's French was passable, but unnecessary. The image explained everything. A woman, dark-haired and devastating, wrapped around a man in what might generously be called an embrace. The timestamp read 20 minutes ago. "I see." Her throat closed. "I don't understand what you want me to." "You see what everyone sees." He set the phone down with unnatural care, each movement deliberate. "Someone who belongs to me, choosing to belong elsewhere." Isolde's fingers twisted in her apron. She shouldn't be here. Shouldn't be seeing this. Men like Kazimir Volkov didn't reveal fractures to the help. They certainly didn't summon maids to witness their humiliation. "Mr. Volkov, I should—" Victoria was supposed to arrive yesterday. His accent thickened slightly, the only tell that something beneath his perfect control was hemorrhaging. "Christmas in the mountains," she said. A romantic gesture. "I rearranged shipments, postponed 3 meetings." He laughed, and the sound had edges. "I don't postpone meetings, Isolde." The use of her name startled her. She wasn't sure he'd known it. "I'm sorry." Inadequate words. But what else could she offer? He moved then, crossing to the window that overlooked snow-covered grounds. The moon painted him in silver and shadow, highlighting the aristocratic lines of his face, the sharp jaw, the cruel elegance of his profile. "Beautiful like a blade is beautiful." "Are you?" He didn't turn. "Sorry that I'm alone, or sorry that you have to witness it?" "Both." Honesty felt dangerous, but less dangerous than lies. "Maybe neither. I don't know you well enough to be sorry about the right things." That made him look at her. Really look, for the first time since she'd started working in this museum of a house. His gaze traveled from her simple braid to her worn shoes, cataloging everything the wealthy learn to render invisible. No, he said softly, you don't know me at all. The heating system hummed. Snow began to fall outside, fat flakes that would bury the world by morning. Isolde felt the weight of the empty mansion pressing down, miles of rooms, all that space, and somehow she'd ended up in the only one that mattered. The family won't return until the 27th, Casimir said. Security is minimal. The weather report predicts we'll be snowed in by midnight. He picked up a crystal decanter, poured amber liquid into a new glass. It seems we're stuck with each other, Miss Crane. He drank, and his eyes never left hers. I wonder, he continued, voice dropping to something almost intimate, what you do when no one's watching. The question hung between them like a loaded gun. Isolde retreated to the kitchen before she could answer, before she could ask what he meant, before the strange electricity in that room could convince her that proximity to Casimir Volkov was anything other than career suicide. The kitchen sprawled across the mansion's ground floor, industrial and sterile, designed to cater parties of 100. Tonight it felt cavernous. She turned on only the lights she needed, creating an island of warm glow in an ocean of shadows, and tried to remember what her hands were supposed to be doing. The Christmas Eve dinner. Right. Tradition dictated a feast even if no one would eat it. She'd planned honeyed duck, roasted vegetables with herbs from the greenhouse, a chocolate torte that took 6 hours to set properly. Food, as performance art, meant to be photographed and discarded. But her hands were shaking. She pressed her palms flat against the marble counter and forced herself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The same technique she'd used in Paris when the panic attacks started, when her mother's medical bills had metastasized faster than the cancer, and Isolde had learned that desperation makes you accept positions in houses owned by men who make people disappear. The Vitelli family was old money pretending to be respectable. Casimir Volkov was something else entirely. A guest who'd stayed for 2 years, conducting business from the East Wing like a general in occupied territory. The staff whispered about him in rapid Italian she wasn't supposed to understand. Dangerous, connected, untouchable. And now she'd seen him bleed. You left before I finished talking. Isolde spun. He stood in the doorway, still holding his glass, still unbuttoned, still undone in that carefully controlled way that probably signaled apocalypse to people who knew him better. The kitchen lights caught the sharp angles of his face, made his eyes look almost colorless. I shouldn't have been there in the first place. She kept the counter between them, a laughable barrier. I apologize for intruding. I called you in. Yes, she swallowed. That was unusual. Unusual. He tasted the word, then smiled, a dangerous expression that didn't reach his eyes. That's diplomatic. You mean inappropriate? Unhinged, perhaps? The kind of behavior that makes staff nervous. I'm always nervous around you, Mr. Volkov. The honesty surprised them both. His eyebrows lifted fractionally, the only crack in his composure. He moved further into the kitchen, each step deliberate, and set his glass on the counter. Not close to her, not far enough away. Because you're afraid of me, he said. Not a question. Because I don't understand the rules around you. Isolde forced herself to meet his gaze. I know how to navigate families like the Vitellis. Old money, old games. But you, she gestured helplessly. You exist in a different language. Russian? Power. The word landed between them. Casimir went very still, and Isolde realized she'd made a terrible mistake. You didn't name these things. Didn't acknowledge the violence that hummed beneath polite society. You pretended the monster was a man and hoped he'd return the favor. But he laughed. Actually laughed. And the sound was startling. genuine amusement mixed with something darker. "You're smarter than you pretend to be," he said. "The meek act, the invisible servant routine. It's good. Convincing. But I've been watching you, Isolde. You move through this house like you're solving an equation. Always 3 steps ahead, always calculating." Her mouth went dry. "I just do my job." "No." He picked up his glass, swirled the liquid. "You survive your job. There's a difference. I recognize it because I do the same thing." He drank, then fixed her with that unnerving stare. "We're both pretending to be something we're not. The difference is, I'm better at it." "What are you pretending to be?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Casimir's smile sharpened. "Civilized." The heating system kicked off. In the sudden silence, Isolde could hear snow hitting windows, the old house settling, her own heartbeat loud in her ears. She should leave, should invent an excuse and retreat to her small room on the 3rd floor, lock the door, pretend this conversation never happened. Instead, she heard herself say, "What do you want from me?" "Want?" He seemed to consider this. "I want you to make dinner." "Dinner?" "It's Christmas Eve. You planned a feast." "I'm hungry." He gestured at the pristine kitchen, the ingredients she'd arranged with museum precision. "Cook for me, Isolde. Pretend I'm worth the effort." There was something raw beneath the command, something that made her chest ache despite every self-preservation instinct screaming at her to run. This man was dangerous. This situation was dangerous. The way he looked at her, like she was a puzzle he decided to solve, was its own category of threat. But she'd seen the photo on his phone, had watched his perfect control fracture, and despite everything, some stupid, compassionate part of her understood what it felt like to be left behind. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll make dinner." His shoulders dropped a fraction of an inch. Relief, maybe, or surprise. He nodded once and turned to leave. "Mr. Volkov?" He paused in the doorway. "The woman in the photo," Isolde said carefully. "Victoria. Did you love her?" The silence stretched so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he did, his voice was distant, clinical. "I don't know if I'm capable of that." He looked back at her, and his eyes were winter itself. "But I tried. That has to count for something." Then he was gone, and Isolde was alone with her racing pulse and a kitchen full of food meant for ghosts. She tied on her apron and got to work. By midnight, the dining room had transformed. Isolde had set a single table by the windows, intimate, almost romantic, though she refused to examine that impulse too closely. Candles cast dancing shadows across bone china and silver that probably cost more than her mother's entire medical debt. Beyond the glass, snow fell in thick curtains, erasing the world. They were truly alone now. The storm had arrived early, violent, and hungry. She checked her phone and found messages from the groundskeeper. "Roads impassable, power grid unstable. Don't expect anyone until after Christmas." The mansion's generator would keep them warm and lit, but they might as well have been on a different planet. Just her and the Mafia boss, trapped together in a palace of ghosts. Casimir appeared exactly at midnight, and he'd transformed too. Fresh shirt, charcoal gray, and perfectly pressed. Hair slicked back to his usual severity. The fractures she'd witnessed had been sealed away behind his customary armor. Only his eyes betrayed him. Too bright, too focused, like a predator who'd spotted prey. "You didn't have to do all this." He surveyed the table, the food arranged with artistic precision. "I expected sandwiches." "I told you I'd make dinner." Isolde pulled out his chair. The irony of serving him wasn't lost on her. "I don't do anything halfway." "No." He sat, graceful despite his size. "I'm learning that about you." She'd plated everything perfectly, the duck glazed and golden, vegetables arranged like a painting, the torte waiting for later like a dark promise. Cooking for one was different than cooking for crowds. More personal. She'd poured intention into every detail, and watching him notice felt dangerously intimate. Casimir ate in silence for several minutes, not rushed, not performative. He tasted everything with genuine attention, and she found herself watching his reactions. The slight widening of his eyes at the duck, the way he closed them briefly when he tried the sauce. Small surrenders to pleasure from a man who seemed to allow himself very few. "Sit down," he said finally. "I should—" Isolde. He looked up at her, and something in his expression made refusal impossible. "There's enough for 20 people. Sit. Eat. Let me pretend I have dinner companions instead of staff." She hesitated, then took the chair across from him. It felt transgressive. Wrong. She'd served hundreds of meals in houses like this and never once sat at the table. But the rules had dissolved sometime between his shattered glass and this strange, snowbound night. "Why did you take this job?" Casimir asked, pouring wine into her glass without asking if she wanted it. "You're educated. I can hear it in how you speak. This is beneath you." "Nothing honest is beneath anyone." "That's not an answer." Isolde picked up her fork, buying time. The truth was complicated, ugly. But he'd shown her his wounds tonight, hadn't he? Maybe honesty was the currency they were trading in. "My mother was sick," she said. "Cancer. The medical bills." She shook her head. "I was working at a restaurant in Paris studying art history at night. It wasn't enough. Nothing was enough. Then someone told me about agencies that place staff in high-end homes. Private. Discreet. The pay is 3 times what I was making." "So you became invisible." "So I survived." She met his gaze. "Not all of us have the luxury of choosing our battles." He studied her across the candlelight, and she felt exposed. Transparent. Like he could see through her skin to all the desperate choices that had led her here. "You're angry," he observed. "Not at me. At the world. At the unfairness of it all. You hide it well, but it's there. Burning." "Isn't everyone angry?" Isolde heard the edge in her own voice. "At least a little." "No." Casimir drank. "Most people are afraid. Anger requires a certain belief that things could be different, that you deserve better. Fear just wants to survive until tomorrow." "Which are you?" "Both." He smiled that dangerous smile. "But mostly angry." The admission hung between them. Outside, wind howled against ancient stone. The house creaked and settled, reminding them of its age, its weight. Isolde wondered how many secrets these walls had absorbed, how many confessions had been whispered in rooms just like this. "Tell me about Victoria," she said. Not a question, an invitation. Casimir's jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he'd retreat behind his walls, shut her out. Then he leaned back in his chair and looked at the ceiling, as if the answer was written there in plaster and gold leaf. She was appropriate, beautiful, connected, understood the life. Our families had business together. It made sense. He laughed bitterly. Everything made sense except the part where she actually wanted to be with me. Did you want to be with her? I wanted to want to be with her. He met Isolde's eyes. There's a difference. I thought if I performed the relationship correctly, if I said the right things and made the right gestures, I'd eventually feel what I was supposed to feel. And? And apparently, she was doing the same thing. He picked up the photo she'd seen earlier. He must have brought his phone to dinner, and stared at it with clinical detachment. "The man in this picture? My cousin. They've been seeing each other for 6 months. Half our relationship was a lie, and I was too focused on my own performance to notice hers." Isolde felt something crack open in her chest. Recognition, maybe. She knew what it was like to perform your own life, to move through days like you were following a script someone else had written. "I'm sorry," she said again, meant it more this time. Don't be. He set the phone down, face down, like he was burying it. She did me a favor. Showed me that trying to be normal is its own kind of prison. He studied Isolde with renewed intensity. You understand that, don't you? The exhaustion of pretending? Yes. The word came out rough, honest. She saw recognition flash in his eyes, that strange intimacy of two people who'd both learned to hide their real selves so deep that sometimes they forgot where the performance ended and the person began. What would you do? Casimir asked softly. If you could stop pretending? If you could just be? Isolde thought about it. Really thought about it. What would she do if money wasn't a constant anxiety? If she didn't have to smile at people who treated her like furniture? If she could pursue the life she'd imagined before everything fell apart? I'd go to museums, she said finally. Spend hours with paintings. Learn to see the way artists see. I'd travel, not as staff, but as myself. I'd eat in restaurants where I wasn't serving. She stopped, feeling suddenly vulnerable. I'd take up space. Loudly. Unapologetically. Then why don't you? Because, she said, that version of me requires a different life. What if I could give you that life? The offer landed like a grenade between the plates and candles. Isolde's heart stuttered. What? Casimir leaned forward, and the candlelight made him look almost demonic, almost beautiful. Stay here, not as staff, as something else. I'll pay off whatever debts your mother left. Give you enough to finish school. All you have to do. Stop. Isolde stood abruptly, chair scraping. Don't. You didn't let me finish. I don't need to. Her hands were shaking again. I know how this works. Men like you don't give without taking. What would you want in return? His eyes were unreadable. Company. The word struck her like a slap. Not sex, not subservience, not submission, just company. The thing he'd been denied tonight, the thing she'd been denying herself for months in this house full of strangers. That's not... She struggled for words. You can't just offer people different lives. Why not? He stood too, came around the table, not threatening, but intense. I have more money than I'll ever need. You need money. You're smart, you're honest, and tonight you saw me at my worst and didn't flinch. That's worth something. I'm not a pet, Isolde said sharply. Not a replacement for whatever Victoria was. No. He stopped an arm's length away, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and arctic. You're yourself. That's the point. I'm tired of performances, Isolde. Tired of everyone wanting something from me, or being afraid of me, or lying to me. You do none of those things. You don't even know me. Then let me. The intensity in his voice made her breath catch. We have 3 days. Snowed in. No one watching. No roles to play. Let me know you. Let yourself be known. And if by the end you want to walk away, I'll help you do it. Any life you want. No strings. It was insane. Impossible. Everything about this night had detached from reality. The storm, the isolation, the raw honesty crackling between them like static electricity. But beneath her fear and logic, something hungry stirred. Something that wanted to be seen. To exist as more than a shadow in someone else's house. 3 days, she heard herself say. Then we talk about this again. 3 days, he agreed. And when he smiled this time, it reached his eyes. Day 1 of the storm broke gray and strange. Isolde woke in her third-floor room to absolute silence. No traffic, no staff moving through halls, no distant city hum. Just snow falling in thick sheets and wind that sounded like wolves. She dressed in her own clothes, jeans, a cream sweater, things she'd never wear while working, and went downstairs to find Casimir already awake. He'd taken over the library, a cathedral of books and leather that smelled like old paper and ambition. He sat in an armchair by the fire, reading something in Russian, and he'd dressed down too. Dark sweater, black jeans, without his usual armor of suits and severity. He looked younger, almost human. "Coffee's in the kitchen," he said without looking up. "I made it myself. Fair warning, I'm terrible at it." She laughed despite herself. The sound felt foreign in the quiet house, but good. Natural. "I thought powerful men had people for that." "Powerful men get used to being helpless." He marked his page and looked at her. "I'm trying to remember how to do basic things. It's humbling." "Good," she said. "Humility suits you better than arrogance." "Careful, Miss Crane. I might start to think you're not intimidated by me." "Oh, I'm terrified." She moved toward the kitchen. "I'm just tired of showing it." His laugh followed her down the hall, genuine, surprised, alive. They fell into an odd rhythm. Isolde made breakfast. He'd been right about the coffee, it was terrible. And they ate in the library by the fire. No servants' quarters, no master's wing. Just two people in a big house, learning to exist in the same space. Casimir told her about Moscow. Not the sanitized tourist version, but the real city. Brutal winters and brutal politics, beauty wrapped in barbed wire. He told her about his family, oligarchs who'd climbed to power through means he didn't elaborate on. About how he'd been groomed from childhood to take over empires, to make decisions that affected thousands of lives, to never, ever show weakness. "It's exhausting," he admitted, staring into his coffee. "Maintaining that perfect control. One slip and someone will use it against you. So you don't slip. You become the mask." "And Victoria?" "Was another form of armor." He glanced at her. "A relationship that looked right. That signaled stability. I thought if I had the correct pieces in place, the right partner, the right image, I'd feel, I don't know, complete. Did you?" "No. Simple. Devastating. I felt lonelier than when I was alone." Isolde understood that too well. She told him about Paris, about studying art history in tiny apartments and falling in love with Caravaggio's use of shadow. About her mother's diagnosis and how quickly everything had collapsed. How debt became a living thing, hungry and growing, eating her dreams piece by piece. "I used to spend hours at the Louvre," she said softly. "Just sitting with paintings, trying to understand what the artist was thinking, what they were trying to say. It felt like decoding messages from the past." "What did they say?" "That beauty and pain aren't opposites." She looked at him. "That the most profound art comes from people who've suffered, who've seen darkness and decided to create light anyway." Casimir held her gaze. "Is that what you're doing? Creating light?" "I'm trying to survive." Honesty again, that strange currency between them. "But maybe someday I'll do more than that." "3 days," he reminded her. "Then you can do whatever you want." They spent the afternoon exploring the mansion. Isolde had worked here for months, but had only seen the parts that needed eye cleaning. Now Casimir showed her the hidden spaces, the wine cellar that held bottles worth more than cars, the art collection tucked away in climate-controlled rooms, the observatory on the roof where you could see stars when weather permitted. "Vitelli's grandfather built most of this," Casimir explained, leading her through a gallery of Renaissance paintings. "Old money trying to buy culture. Half these are probably stolen." "Probably?" "Definitely." He grinned at her shocked expression. "Welcome to my world, Isolde. Nothing here is as clean as it looks." She stopped in front of a small painting, a Madonna and Child, rendered in devastating tenderness. The artist had captured something eternal in the way the mother looked at her baby. Complete, unconditional love. "My mother looked at me like that," Isolde whispered. "Even at the end, when she couldn't remember my name. That love never left her eyes. Casimir moved beside her, not touching, but close. Tell me about her. So she did. Spilled memories like water, baking bread on Sunday mornings, her mother's laugh, the way she'd taught Isolde to see beauty in ordinary things, how the cancer had stolen her piece by piece until only the love remained, burning in morphine-glazed eyes. She wanted me to be happy, Isolde said. Not successful or wealthy, just happy. I don't think I've managed it. Neither have I. His voice was rough. Maybe we're not built for happiness. Or maybe we've just forgotten how. They stood together in the gallery, two damaged people trying to remember what wholeness felt like. Outside, the storm intensified. Inside, something fragile and dangerous was building between them. Evening found them in the kitchen again. Isolde taught Casimir to cook. Basic things like how to properly sear meat, how to build flavors. He was surprisingly good at taking direction, and watching him focus on something as mundane as chopping vegetables was startling. His hands, which she'd only seen signing documents or destroying crystal, moved with unexpected grace. "You're enjoying this," she observed. "I am." He looked up, and his smile was unguarded. "When's the last time you let someone teach you something?" "I don't know." He considered. "I'm usually the one giving orders." "Well, in this kitchen, I'm in charge." She bumped his hip with hers. Casual, friendly, and immediately regretted it. Too familiar. Too intimate. But he didn't pull away. Just smiled and kept chopping. They ate dinner at the kitchen counter like normal people. Drank wine. Argued about movies and books. And whether money could actually buy happiness. Isolde said no. Casimir said it could at least rent it. The conversation flowed easy and natural, hours disappearing into laughter and debate. At some point, Isolde realized she hadn't thought about her role here all day, hadn't performed the invisible servant routine. She'd just been herself, sharp-tongued and opinionated and alive. "What are you thinking?" Casimir asked. "That this is dangerous." "Why?" "Because," she met his eyes, "in 2 days I have to remember how to be just the maid again. And after this," she gestured between them, "I don't know if I can." "Then don't." He set down his glass. "Be something else. Be yourself." "It's not that simple." "It could be." He reached across the counter, not quite touching her hand. "Stay with me, Isolde. Not as staff. Not as obligation. Just stay." Her heart hammered. This was the moment. The choice. She could retreat to safety, to the known world of roles and rules, or she could step off the cliff and see if he'd catch her. "Ask me again tomorrow," she whispered. "I'll ask you every day until you say yes." And when he looked at her like that, like she was something precious instead of invisible, Isolde wondered if maybe happiness wasn't as impossible as she'd thought. Day 2 began with a power outage. Isolde woke to absolute cold and darkness. The generator had died sometime in the night, and without it, the mansion became a tomb. Beautiful and deadly. She grabbed blankets and found Casimir already awake, building a fire in the main hall's enormous fireplace. "There's a secondary generator in the basement," he said, not looking up from his work. "But the storm took out something in the electrical system. We're running on fireplaces and whatever gas is left for the stove." "How long?" "Until the storm passes and someone can get to us." He struck a match, and flame caught. Light bloomed across his face, painting him in gold and shadow. Could be today. Could be tomorrow. They should have been panicking. Instead, Isolde felt a strange exhilaration. The last vestiges of civilization had been stripped away. No phones. The cell tower must be down. No lights except fire. No heat except what they created. Just 2 people and the most basic requirements for survival. "We should inventory what we have," she said, practical even now. "Food, water, Candles. Already did. Casimir stood, brushing soot from his hands. Enough supplies for a week if we're careful. The house is well stocked. Vitelli likes to be prepared for emergencies. Do you think he predicted this kind of emergency? Casimir's smile was wicked. Probably not. They spent the morning gathering what they needed, dragging blankets and food to the main hall, which had the largest fireplace and the best insulation. It felt like playing house, or preparing for siege. Isolde caught herself laughing as they argued about the best way to arrange pillows, and Casimir looked at her like she was speaking a foreign language. "What?" she asked. "You're not afraid anymore." He said it like a discovery. "Of me, of this situation. You're just here." "Should I be afraid?" "Most people are." "Most people," Isolde said slowly, "don't get to see you make terrible coffee and burn toast. It's hard to be scared of someone who's hopeless in a kitchen." He laughed. That real laugh she was learning to crave. Then he sobered, something shifting behind his eyes. "Isolde, I need to tell you something." Her stomach dropped. Here it was. The revelation that would ruin this fragile thing they'd built. "Okay. The business I do. The reason I'm here. Why the Vitellis tolerate my presence. It's not." He struggled for words. "I'm not a good man. The money I have, the power. It comes from things I'm not proud of. Things that would horrify you if you knew details." "I know," she said quietly. He blinked. "You know? I'm not stupid, Casimir. I've worked in houses like this. I know what kind of men live in them." She moved closer to the fire, to him. "Do you want me to ask what you've done?" "No." Rough, honest. "But I need you to understand who I am before you. Before we... Before we what?" He looked at her then. Really looked. And the intensity in his gaze stole her breath. "Before I kiss you. Because once I do, I won't be able to pretend this is just passing time in a storm. And you deserve to make that choice with open eyes." Isolde's heart was a drum. "You want to kiss me. I've wanted to kiss you since you walked into my office and didn't flinch when I threw that glass. Since you sat across from me at dinner and called me out. Since you laughed in the kitchen like you'd forgotten how and just remembered." He stepped closer. "But I'm giving you an exit. Take it, Isolde. Walk away. Keep yourself safe from me." She should have. Every rational part of her screamed to retreat. This man was dangerous. This situation was impossible. Whatever they were building would collapse the moment reality returned. But she was so tired of being safe. "No," she said. "No? No, I won't walk away." She closed the distance between them, heart hammering, skin electric. "I see you, Casimir. The violence you're capable of. The darkness. And I see the man who breaks when someone betrays him. Who wants to learn how to cook. Who's so desperate not to be alone that he's offering me a different life, just to have company." She reached up, cupped his face. "I see all of it. And I'm still here." He shuddered under her touch. "You're going to ruin me." "Good," she whispered. "You could use some ruining." When he kissed her, it was nothing like she'd imagined. Not rough or demanding. Gentle. Reverent. Like she was something breakable he was learning to hold. His hands framed her face, thumbs stroking her cheekbones, and she felt herself dissolving into the touch. This was what drowning felt like. What falling felt like. What choosing danger over safety felt like when you'd been playing it safe your whole life and had nothing to show for it but scars. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Casimir pressed his forehead to hers. "Tell me this isn't just the storm. Tell me when the world comes back. You'll still..." "I don't know," she admitted, honest to the end. "But I know right now I'm choosing you. Isn't that enough?" "It has to be." They spent the day wrapped in blankets by the fire, talking and not talking. At some point, talking became touching. Innocent at first, then less so. Hands finding skin, breath mingling, barriers dissolving. They moved slow, like people who'd never touched another person before and were learning the language. Casimir was careful with her, almost tentative, like he expected her to vanish if he held too tight. And Isolde discovered she could be brave when someone looked at her like she was the only real thing in a world of illusions. "I've never done this," he said against her throat, and she understood he didn't mean sex. He meant intimacy, vulnerability, choosing someone because he wanted them, not because they fit into some strategic plan. "Neither have I," she confessed. "Not like this. Not where it matters." They undressed each other slowly, reverently, in firelight that turned skin to gold. And when they finally came together, it felt like something breaking open. All the loneliness, all the pretending, all the carefully maintained distance shattering into pieces they'd never be able to reassemble. Afterward, wrapped in blankets and each other, Isolde traced the scars on his ribs, a map of violence she didn't ask about. He kissed the calluses on her hands, evidence of work she'd done to survive. They were both damaged, both surviving. And for these stolen hours, that was enough. "Tell me about the life you'd want," Casimir murmured into her hair. "If I could give you anything." "I'd want to wake up without fear," she said, "without checking my bank account first thing, without calculating how many more months of work until I'm free of debt. I'd want to walk into museums as a student, not as someone who cleans them. I'd want—" She paused. "I'd want to matter to someone, not as what I can do for them, but as who I am." His arms tightened around her. "You matter to me. You barely know me. I know enough." He pulled back to look at her. "I know you're brave. You're honest even when it costs you. You see beauty in broken things. You made me laugh for the first time in months. You looked at me at my worst and decided I was worth staying for." His thumb brushed her lower lip. "That's not nothing, Isolde." "What do you want?" she asked. "Really want if you could have anything?" He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I want to stop performing. Stop being what everyone expects. I want to wake up next to someone who knows what I am and doesn't flinch. I want to build something real instead of maintaining empires I don't believe in." He kissed her forehead. "I want you to look at me the way you're looking at me right now, like I'm human instead of monster. I want to deserve that look." "You already do." "Liar," he said fondly. "Beautiful liar." They fell asleep tangled together as wind howled and fire crackled. And for the first time in longer than Isolde could remember, she dreamed of something other than drowning. She woke to gray light and cold. The fire had died to embers. Casimir's warmth was gone. "Casimir?" She sat up, pulling blankets around her. The hall was empty, silent. "Casimir?" Footsteps on marble. He appeared from the corridor, fully dressed, phone in hand. His face was unreadable. "The cell tower's back up," he said flatly. "I have 43 missed calls. The roads will be clear by evening." Isolde felt reality crashing back like a wave. Of course. The storm had to end. The world had to return. They'd been living in a bubble, and bubbles always burst. "Okay," she said carefully. "What does that mean?" He looked at her then, and something in his eyes made her chest ache. "It means I have a decision to make. And so do you." He crossed to her, knelt beside where she sat wrapped in blankets and the smell of him, took her hands in his, those dangerous hands that had learned to be gentle. "I meant what I said. About giving you a different life. I can do it, Isolde. Pay off everything, set you up with enough money to finish school, to never have to serve anyone again. No strings. You walk away free. But I don't want you to walk away." Raw honesty. "I want you to stay. Not here. I'm leaving today, back to Moscow. business that can't wait. But stay with me. Come with me. Be, he struggled. Be mine, whatever that means. Isolde's heart was fragmenting. You're asking me to give up my life. I'm asking you to trade one life for another. This house, this country, this role you've been playing. Leave it. Start over. With me. As what? Your girlfriend? Your companion? Another Victoria? As yourself. Fierce now. As the woman who called me out on my bullshit and made me remember what it's like to feel something real. I don't know what that makes you. Partner, maybe. Equal. The person who sees me and doesn't flinch. It was insane. Impossible. She'd known him for 2 days, really known him. You didn't upend your entire life for someone you'd known for 2 days. But she'd been playing it safe her whole life. And where had it gotten her? Invisible in other people's houses, drowning in debt, too afraid to want anything because wanting hurt too much. I need time, she whispered, to think, to process. How much time? I don't know. She pulled her hands free, wrapped arms around herself. This is huge, Casimir. You're asking me to trust you with my entire future. And yes, these days have been extraordinary. But how do I know it's real? How do I know when reality comes back, you won't regret this? That you won't see me as just another mistake? His jaw clenched. You don't. That's what trust is, Isolde. A leap. Easy for you to say. You're not the one giving up everything. I'm giving up my carefully constructed isolation. My conviction that being alone is safer than being seen. That's not nothing. He stood, and distance opened between them like a wound. But you're right. The risk isn't equal. I'm asking you to bet on me, and I haven't earned that yet. So, what do we do? He pulled a card from his pocket. Heavy stock, embossed. An address in Moscow. This is where I'll be. If you decide you want this, want me, come. I'll be waiting. Take a week, a month, whatever you need. But know that the offer expires when you walk through that door. Either you're all in, or we end this now. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. He moved to the door, paused. For what it's worth, I hope you come. I hope you're brave enough to choose the terrifying unknown over the comfortable familiar. But I'll understand if you're not. Most people aren't. Then he was gone, and Isolde sat alone by dead embers, holding a card that weighed more than paper should. The Vitelli family returned on the evening of the 27th, loud and full of stories from their various holidays. They didn't notice anything different. Why would they? The mansion looked exactly as they'd left it. The maid was where she was supposed to be, invisible and efficient. They didn't know their world had ended and rebuilt itself in 3 days. Isolde moved through her duties like a ghost. Cleaning rooms, preparing meals, existing in the spaces between people's notice. But everything had changed. She couldn't slip back into the role, couldn't make herself small and silent. She kept dropping things, forgetting orders. Mrs. Vitelli asked twice if she was feeling well. I'm fine, Isolde lied. Just tired. But she wasn't fine. She was fragmenting. Casimir's card burned in her pocket like a brand. She'd memorized the address. Tverskaya Street, Moscow. A place she'd never been. In a life she couldn't imagine. He'd left the same day the roads cleared, after one last look at her that said everything and nothing. I'll be waiting, he'd repeated. But I won't chase you. You have to choose this. A week passed, then 2. Isolde worked and saved and tried to forget the feeling of his hands on her skin, his laugh in the library, the way he'd looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. She couldn't forget. On the 15th day, she opened her bank account and found it transformed. Her mother's medical debt, gone, paid in full, every creditor satisfied, and a note, You deserve to be free of this weight, whether you come to me or not. K. Isolde sat on her small bed and cried for the first time since her mother died. Not from grief, from the devastating recognition that someone had seen her struggle and cared enough to end it. No strings, no demands, just kindness. She called her best friend from Paris that night. Colette, who'd known her before desperation, who still sent postcards asking when Isolde would come home. I need advice, Isolde said without preamble. About what? About whether I'm insane. She told her everything. The storm, the Mafia boss, the 3 days that felt like a lifetime, the impossible offer. The card in her pocket she'd touched so many times it was wearing smooth. Colette was quiet for a long time. Then, do you love him? I don't know. How can I love someone I barely know? That's not what I asked. Isolde closed her eyes. I think I could, if I let myself, if I was brave enough to try. Then what are you afraid of? Everything. She was afraid of being wrong, of trusting the wrong person, of giving up control and finding herself trapped in a different kind of prison. She was afraid of wanting something so much and having it destroy her. But she was also afraid of the alternative, of staying safe and small, of being 60 years old and wondering what would have happened if she'd been brave enough to choose the terrifying unknown. I'm afraid of not being enough, she whispered, of him realizing I'm just me. Not special, not extraordinary, just a woman who's good at being invisible. Isolde. Colette's voice was gentle. He saw you. Really saw you. And he chose you anyway. That's not nothing. It might not be real. Nothing is real until you make it real. A pause. You've spent your whole life making yourself small for other people. Maybe it's time to take up space. To be loud and unapologetic and selfish enough to chase what you want. What if I'm wrong? Then you'll survive it. You've survived everything else. Isolde hung up and stared at the card. Moscow. A man who broke when someone betrayed him. A leap into the terrifying unknown. She'd survived her mother's death. Crushing debt. Working in houses where she was furniture. She'd survived by being careful, calculated, safe. Maybe it was time to survive something else. Something wild and uncertain and completely hers. 3 days later, Isolde gave her notice. Mrs. Vitelli was surprised but understanding. You seem distracted lately, dear. Perhaps it's time for a change. She didn't know how right she was. Isolde packed her few belongings, withdrew her savings, substantial now, without debt, and booked a ticket to Moscow. She didn't tell Casimir she was coming, didn't give him warning. Either he'd meant what he said or he hadn't. Either way, she'd know. The flight was long, the cab from the airport longer. Isolde watched Moscow unfold outside her window. Golden domes and Soviet architecture, beauty and brutality twisted together. A city that matched the man she was chasing. The address led to a building that was more fortress than home. She stood outside for 10 minutes, gathering courage. This was it. The moment. She could still turn around. Still choose safety. Instead, she walked through the door. The lobby was marble and intimidation. A guard appeared immediately, massive, suspicious. Your business? I'm here to see Casimir Volkov. Her voice shook. My name is Isolde Crane. He'll know who I am. The guard studied her, then spoke into a radio in rapid Russian. Waited. His expression shifted. Surprise, then something like respect. 10th floor, he said. He's expecting you. No, Isolde thought as the elevator climbed. He's hoping for me. There's a difference. The doors opened directly into an apartment. Not a hallway, not a corridor. The elevator opened into a living space that was all windows and light. Moscow sprawling below, like a kingdom. Casimir stood by those windows. He'd heard the elevator, but he didn't turn. Just stood with his hands in his pockets, shoulders tense. "I didn't think you'd come," he said quietly. "Neither did I." Isolde stepped out, and the elevator doors closed behind her with terrible finality. "I almost didn't." "What changed your mind?" "You paid my debts." "That was always happening, regardless of your choice." "I know." She moved closer. "That's what changed my mind, that you'd set me free even if it meant losing me. That's—" Her voice broke. "That's the most generous thing anyone's ever done for me." He turned then, and his eyes were the same winter gray she remembered. But there was something else there now. Hope, maybe. Fear. The same terrifying vulnerability she felt. "I meant what I said," Casimir said. "All of it. I want you here. With me. Building whatever this is. But Isolde, you need to understand. My life is complicated. Dangerous sometimes. If you stay, you'll be part of that. I can protect you, but I can't promise it will be easy." "I don't want easy." Isolde closed the distance between them. "I've had easy. Easy is working until you die with nothing to show for it but survival. Easy is making yourself invisible because being seen is too risky. I'm done with easy. What do you want?" She took his face in her hands, the way she had by the fire. "I want to be loud. Take up space. Want things unapologetically. I want to wake up next to someone who sees me and doesn't flinch. I want to build something real with someone who's brave enough to be honest." She kissed him, soft and certain. "I want you, Casimir, even though it's terrifying. Especially because it's terrifying." His laugh was shaky, relieved. "You're insane." "Probably." She grinned. "But you're the one who offered me a different life. Don't be surprised when I take it." He kissed her then, hard and desperate and real. And Isolde felt herself falling into it. Into him. Into this impossible choice that felt more right than anything she'd ever done. When they broke apart, Casimir pressed his forehead to hers. "I don't know how to do this. The relationship, the vulnerability, any of it. I'll probably mess it up." "So will I." Isolde threaded her fingers through his hair. "We'll figure it out together. That's what partnership means." Partnership. He tested the word. "I like that better than possession." "Good. Because I'm not something to be owned." "No," he agreed, smiling that real smile she'd fallen for. "You're something far more dangerous. You're someone who makes me want to be better." They stood together in the light, two broken people choosing to be broken together. Outside, Moscow sprawled in all its complicated glory. Inside, something new was being built, from the ruins of who they'd been. It wouldn't be easy. Isolde knew that. Casimir's world was dark and dangerous, and hers was full of fear and uncertainty. But they'd survived worse than this. They'd survived loneliness, pretending, the exhaustion of being invisible. Maybe together they could survive being seen. "So," Casimir said, tucking her against his chest, "what do we do now?" Isolde looked out at the city, at the life she'd chosen, at the terrifying unknown she'd decided to chase. And she smiled. "Now," she said, "we take up space." Loudly. "I can work with that." They kissed again, slower this time, learning, building. And somewhere in the mansion they'd left behind, snow was falling on empty rooms. But they weren't empty anymore. They were free.